All right, welcome. My name is Lynn Howard, and you are tuning in to the 7th International Conference on Spirituality and Psychology. We're really excited about this panel discussion today with 4 very powerful panelists. Our panel discussion is exploring the power of the mind, body, and spirit. So without further ado, I definitely want to jump in and do a quick introduction. First, we have Maria Laura Bottini, and she is based in Thailand. She's a professional kinesiology practitioner. Oh, it's gonna be one of those days again. In the field of holistic medicine and experienced pranic and sound healer and therapist. She has an absolute passion for healthy, energetic, and empowered you, and she loves to help people manifest their dreams. So welcome, Laura. We also have Dennis, who is chiming in from the UK. He's been blogging since 2004. He actually started blogging as a travel blogger and then transitioned into blogging about mental health. He has a passion for blogging and mental health, and he was inspired to launch his own platform in 2014 while doing his master's degree in psychology at the University of Hertfordshire. It's just one of those days. Anyway, he has been dubbed the world's first blog psychologist. So welcome, Dennis. Then we have our professor, and he's also out of Thailand. And Professor has a master's arts degree from the Buddhist and Pali University in Sri Lanka. He also has a bachelor's degree with first class Pali Special from the University in Sri Lanka, and also in Ayutthaya, Thailand. He has also earned his doctorate degree in Buddhist studies from the same university. He is a lecturer, and we are very excited to have him here. Oh, and he's written more than 35 academic articles, so we're very excited. So thank you, Professor. And then we have Bhavna. Bhavna is also out of Thailand. She is a university lecturer, corporate trainer, academic and creative writing coach, researcher, Reiki master, teacher, and practitioner. And she believes in the well-being and spirituality of individuals and counseling. She's also an author and a poet. So welcome, Bhavna. So thank you all for being here. Let's dive right in. And the first question I actually want to ask all of you, just because this is a very special panel in my heart, but I wanted to ask you why you were excited to be on this panel. And I'm going to go ahead and start with Dennis. Dennis, what made you excited to be on this panel discussion, especially since you do so many, you facilitate a lot of panels across the globe as well?
Yes, although I've facilitated panels, this one is special because I've never been involved in such a really diverse panel talk. A lot of people here from different backgrounds, which are not quite similar with mine. So that's one thing that really got me interested to be on this panel. So thank you for having me on this panel. And I'm really looking forward to hearing all the insights from my co-panelists, Laura, Bhavna, and Professor, and everyone else also in the chat room. I'll be looking forward to hearing your insights on how we can actually learn from each other when it comes to mind, soul, and spirituality.
Excellent. How about you, Professor? Unmute. Professor, please unmute. There we go.
Yeah, sure. Could you mind to repeat the question?
Yeah, of course. What makes you so excited to be on this panel discussion today? Why did you say yes?
Okay, so first of all, it is my great pleasure to share some ideas of the experience related to the theme. The theme of the panel is the main aspiration for me to attend this seminar or the conference, and also it is very important, and it also mainly discusses how the human mind should be developed. Today, I think a human being is facing more challenges than ever before in the history. for a variety of reasons. It is a great pleasure for us to be able to share some ideas in a way that benefits the people who are faced with such challenges in any way. So it is important to put in effort, perseverance, and correct mental and physical and verbal actions, as well as to make life better for oneself and for others. So I accepted it without a second thought, as it was perceived as the theme that could somehow help to the people. So that's the reason. Yeah.
Thank you, Professor. Bhavna, how about you?
Firstly, hello, namaste, and sawadika. I dived in instantly when I was asked. I was excited, but at the same time, I was just so grateful to be part of something that we can keep sharing and be around like-minded people. At the same time, all of us come from diverse backgrounds, that we have so many experiences that we can share on our journey of mental, emotional health and spiritual health, and what we practice in terms of flow and creativity. So I was just so glad to, share insight, share experience, and there's so much learning that we could do from so many other people as well. That's why I said yes.
Yay, thank you, Bhavna. And Laura.
And actually what motivated me is, first of all, to learn about tomorrow people, because I didn't know that before. And actually when I started searching what is it about, I really like when they call themselves as the ears and the voice of different perspectives. And I do believe that in the world, it's all about that. Like Dennis, Professor, and Bhavna said, it's not about only one way of thinking, it's about including variety and that diversification, which give us freedom and our ability to consider ourselves that we're way more than only one aspect of life. So I like the idea of bringing together the idea of personal growth, positive change, and also continuous learning. Thank you.
Excellent. Oh, thank you. And thank you again for all saying yes. We are super excited about this panel and all of your diverse backgrounds and what you'll bring. Speaking of diverse or diversity, the term mind, body, spirit is very cliche, if you would, in a lot of areas. And it's pretty, I think it's set in context that's not necessarily really deep or meaningful. Not that it always has to be. However, I'd love to hear all of your perspective of, what mind, body, spirit means to you. So we're going to explore the power in a second, but first let's get kind of like a definition or context around what mind, body, spirit means to you. And I'm actually going to go backwards. So Laura, we'll start with you.
Body, mind, spirit for me is the ability to tap into the magic of remembering that we are multidimensional beings, of getting to know that we are way more than just our feelings, or just our thoughts, or just a physical body, or just our spiritual journey, that we are all those layers all together. I believe we are amazing, abundant, living, multisensory beings. And mind, body, spirit is all about that. It's about understanding the uniqueness within all of us and being able to integrate all those elements in our everyday experience, in our everyday life. Thank
Excellent. You. Thank you. Bhavna.
Wow, Laura. All right. So for me, mind, body, spirit is more, I would say, dimensional. And we live a life at different stages of our life, different age groups, right? And as we are growing, we are having a pyramid. We're living a life of a pyramid of different layers, emotions. And I would say our life is filled with stories. So mind, body, spirit is a very special story of every individual being that is filled with energies, filled with every part of our cell has a story and an experience that we kind of unfold at every age. And once we unfold it, we kind of, dive into a very deep reflection and understanding, and as well as healing. So mind, body, spirit for me is programming, unprogramming, relearning, and then decoding and manifesting the better version of people, better version of me.
Oh, I love that. How about you, Professor? How would you unmute, please?
Okay, I think these explorations of mental, physical, and spiritual strength is very timely, and psychological power in particular should be discussed here as a priority. So as we all know, a person's mental development helps to maintain his physical condition. Even the word human is a phrase with a very deep psychological or philosophical meaning. So that psychological nature holds man in a very high place among other beings. A person with a mental state that has developed to a very high level among human beings make him or her a higher status among ordinary people. Such a developed mind, body, and spirit made ordinary people, including like Siddhartha Gautama and Jesus and Nabi, into exalted status and made their reputation to be respected, venerated by other human beings, and remain such reputations even today. So I think this discussion about mind, body, and spirit, spiritual development is more practical. So that I think it is what I really means of this context.
Excellent,
Yeah,
Professor. Thank you. Thank you. And Dennis.
Well, Lynn, I'll tie this in with the things that I'm currently doing at the moment. So I'm a PhD student, and I'm currently working on a project trying to help young adults improve their levels of resilience. And I did a series of qualitative interviews where I was talking to young adults in Philippines and currently with young adults in Malaysia. And one thing that I've realized is that they have different concepts of resilience, and they try to tie it in with their culture, with their religion, with what they think resilience is, and how it actually helps them cope with different levels of adversity. And so one thing that really struck with me when I was talking to these young adults is that this notion of resilience is fluid. And that's also the same way that I see these concepts of spirit, of mind. It's all about discovering your inner strength, be it within the context of resilience. And it's all about reconstruction of meaning, as what my co-panelists have already alluded to earlier. And I think that as we grow old and as we accumulate more experience, we begin to reconstruct and update notions of these concepts.
Thank you, Dennis. Lots of good notes already. Okay, so now I'm going to ask what, so the panel discussion name is Exploring the Power of Mind, Body, and Spirit. What are, because I love some action items, this is me, what are some things, and I'll ask you a few action item questions throughout this panel discussion, but what are some things that individuals can do today, regardless of their mindset, regardless of where their body's at, regardless of where their spiritual practice is, that they can start to explore the connectivity between the three, as well as the power behind it? And I know this is a big question, but what are some actionable items that individuals could do in order to start exploring the power of the three? Bhavna, I'm going to come to you.
The power that we have as beings is that we can always tap into creativity. And, you know, when we utilize creative tools within us, whether it's journaling, whether it's poetry, writing, any form of writing, any form of flow in, you know, writing your thoughts down, kind of, you know, put you in that part where you are allowing yourself to be vulnerable. You are allowing yourself to share the fiction, the nonfiction, and the storytelling. And of course, I would always tell you know, everyone to practice meditation. You can practice mindfulness meditation, or you can practice any form of meditation that is good for you. So meditation actually helps taps into different parts of your entire being, because the entire universe is within you, right? And when you're meditating, you are allowed to get into the inner journey where you are finding out a lot of things. But at the same time, you learn empathy, you learn compassion, you learn emotional intelligence. The practice of SEL, the practice of social emotional learning and EQ today allows you to become much more, much more healthier, I would say, because our mental and emotional health, our spiritual journey is very, very much connected with how we see ourselves, how we are actually programmed with our belief system. So I think some of the practical tools, meditation, creative tools, breathing exercises, and you can also check into you can go for counseling. You can also do Reiki. You can practice Reiki. You can learn something that is actually good for you, and you can always talk to someone whom you trust, or you get into knowing if you don't know who to go to. That's what I would say.
Thank you, Bhavna. How about you, Dennis?
Well, I'm pleased to hear that there's an overlap with the interests of Bhavna and myself, because I've always been a believer of power of words. So even before the internet, I think I've already been doing some form of blogging. So I remember during my childhood in the Philippines, I have this journal. I still have this journal until now. And I just use that as an outlet to express myself, my frustration, my ambitions. And then when I did my master's degree at University of Hertfordshire, that's how you say it, Lynn, by the way. So when I did my degree at University of Hertfordshire, I explored the efficacy of how we can use expressive writing. And one thing that I found out is that it's not going to work for everyone, let's be honest. Some people cannot capitalize on the power of words. They're more, they're more physical. But I've always been a believer of the power of words, of journaling, and also of content creation, because that's what I do. And just to emphasize the point of Bhavna is that look for ways that you could actually cultivate creativity, because in return, by cultivating your creativity, you're actually allow yourself to flourish. And those outlets can actually allow you to look life on in a more meaningful way. You're not just looking at life as just like, it's just one of those days that you have to do work. But when you have a creative outlet, you have a different meaning, that life doesn't just revolve with your family, that you also have a time for yourself.
Excellent. Thank you, Dennis. How about you, Laura?
Well, I shared from Bhavna and Dennis already great tips. So in order not to repeat, I will share a bit. The one that I will add as well is, in order to maintain ourselves being strong and aligned at all levels, is apart from monitoring our thoughts, and I do love the idea of journaling and meditating, I also believe that is vital and fundamental to create healthy relationships, to cultivate meaningful relationships, because we know that the quality of our life is connected to the quality of our relationships. So, and also there are certain, like, loads of studies that actually represent that. The healthier relationship we have around us, the healthier we feel, right? So cultivating healthy relationships is one of the most important things for me. And actually remembering that we become one of the 5 people that, connected, that we see in our everyday experience. So choosing wisely also with whom we want to share our daily life is also a vital factor in order to keep that alignment. And also energetically, something that I like recommending to my clients through kinesiology is one exercise called emotional stress release. Whenever, like Bhavna was saying, whenever we are going through stress, the person gets to feel actually unsafe, right? So what happens? Whenever we feel unsafe, the blood in our body goes to the back side of our brain. And the back side of our brain is all about survival. It's about fight or flight. It's about getting things done. The issue is, maybe that way is not the most creative way, right? And then we have the front side of our brain. And the front side of our brain is connected to creativity, to doing something on a different way, absolutely different from which we have imagined or experienced before. So something that I like advising my clients when I see that they are overwhelmed or going through a lot of stress is to bring one hand on the back of the body, of the brain, on the skull, on the occipital aspect, and one on the forehead, to inhale and exhale, to close their eyes, to allow themselves to feel grounded and to get to see, what am I feeling? What is the experience that I'm about to feel? Let's say I need to go through hard conversation. I need to maybe ask for a promotion. I need to say no to someone, whatever it is. To imagine that scenario that brings us stress and make us feel disconnected. To close our eyes, bring all the special effects needed, and then basically to inhale and exhale and allow the blood to go all the way to the front of the body, and to allow the body to connect with another creative aspect, which means to say, now imagine how would you like to interact with that situation? What's the way you would like to deal with this on a creative aspect? So in that way you regain the power and you regain your ability to create that life that you want. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. How about you, Professor? What tips or actionable items would you give someone who is just starting to explore the power of the mind, body, and spirit?
Yeah, that as it is a part of my process, and also like I'm working as the lecturer, and at the same time I'm a head of the department. So sometimes I have to guide many students. Those are coming from different region, different areas, and also the different religion. So how we can maintain, how we can guide those students come from the different social background. So it is very necessary. Like in our institute, we provide actually such a meditation technique or meditation teachings to concern with both tranquility and insight. So providing dealing with one's mind to understand that the nature of the mind, and at the same time how we can apply these or the practices of the teaching in our day-to-day life. So that is what we have to do at the when I dealing with these students. Actually we have like such a subject just to teach about mindfulness. So this does not mean just like a mindfulness that related to with the teachings of the Buddha, but beside that, whatever the ethical concept or the practical teachings come from different traditions, how we can apply. So I think exploring mind means understanding oneself. That is very necessary. So once like we mentioned, but the Buddha like in since I have been I have this path of I mean this the life like a monk for almost like more than 35 years. So then from during this time I have been like dealing with many situations. It because of the mental ability. And if you have such aspirations or the determination to achieve something, so guide our disciples or our students or whatever, whoever, those who really need such guidance. So I think such way that exploring one's mind and also like guiding like such not only the theory but also the practice, that is very necessary. So we are providing such like for every year, like we annually organize such a meditation retreat for those students who are studying in any level. It doesn't matter my BA, MA or PhD degree, but everyone, no matter, they should practice. So this is just to encourage them to understand, to explore their own mind and how we can put into the practice. So that is all.
Oh, such great tips. Of course, meditation and healthy relationships, creativity, opening up, being vulnerable. So many good tips there. I am going to come back to, because all four of you touched a lot on the mind and the spirit side. I want to come back to the body question, but before we come back to that, I want to ask a question to kind of float on something Professor started to speak about, and a couple other of you did, is what could be, let's live in the vision, let's live in the ethereal, what could be, and I guess I shouldn't say ethereal because it can be, what could be the potential or the result of one truly leaning into the power of their own mind, body, spirit. So what could be a result if they were truly leaning into it? And as Laura spoke about, being in alignment with the mind, body, and spirit. Bhavna, I'm going to come to you first.
I believe that alignment is so important, and I practice it myself I try to, so I made myself like, okay, flow, and then Pac-Man, inspired by Pac-Man. So practice, alignment, and creativity. So I feel that when we are talking about our own body, our mind, we have neurotransmitters. Our amygdala would be exposed to expression, to our emotion, and we need to understand. Of course, we can sometimes when we're in that emotional state or something is happening to us, we won't get very scientific, and we will forget about alignment for a moment. But with what Professor said and what Dennis and Laura said in your question, I feel that when we practice grounding, grounding helps when we kind of remind ourselves to come back to centering ourselves, and meditation kind of helps us with that. When we remind ourselves that, okay, so many things are going on, we have to rise above the situation, right? We have to understand that why are we reacting, or what is response? How are we seeing the situation? And sometimes without even realizing, our body is reacting to things that maybe we have kept, those kind of emotions that we've kept in our system. So alignment really is important. And when it comes to understanding our body, we need to understand that our mind is constantly in that flux. We are just having too many thoughts, too many things happening. Basically, we have lived so many lives in one experience. Or different versions of ourselves in that one experience, and or we're playing different roles in one day. So we have to come back to alignment, we have to come back to grounding. We need to have some kind of practice. That's what I would say.
Thank you, Bhavna. Professor, how about you? I'm going to come back to you. What do you feel the potential is when someone can truly lean into the power of their mind, body, spirit? Unmute.
So that with concern in this, there are 5 factors to be developed. From our scriptures, we can see that whenever they're facing with any situation, that any difficulties, so we have to deal with 5 factors to be developed, that starting with the confidence. So confidence, and also the effort, right effort, and mindfulness, and concentration, and last is the insight, or the panya, or the wisdom. So when we started from these practices, like they are very very practical in even to deal with day-to-day life. So as I mentioned very beginning, that we are facing, the human beings are facing with many challenges. So how to deal with those challenges? So here we can see that those factors, those are very relevant with mental development. But also at the same time, when we develop these mental factors, of course, we can achieve such development or such encouragement to maintain the body. And of course, that maintaining the body in the same way, and it is leading into such a spiritual development. So I think with applying about these practices, and also paying attention to world conditions, what is going on, and also understanding whatever the failures or whatever the success. So dealing with here in especially like equanimity. So the balancing of those mental factors are very necessary. So I think confidence and effort, and mindfulness, concentration, and insight, those factors are very relevant.
Thank you, Professor. Dennis, how about you?
Well, 2 things, mindfulness and positive thinking. I think those are the things that would really, would be the potential benefits of alignment. And it allows us to consider our thoughts, and in return consider how our thoughts affects our attitudes, and how this affects our actions. And that's how I see this alignment, how this affects, and also affects each other. And also realizing that although we can, we can be positive and we can be mindful of things, we also have to realize that there are some things that which are beyond our control. So it's not like we're going to be, we're going to be pessimistic, but we'll just accept our limitations as human. I think the best way to describe this would be, it reminds me of the Serenity Prayer. I'm not religious, but I really draw inspiration from that. And I think some of you will be familiar with the Serenity Prayer. It says that God grant me the serenity to accept the things that I cannot change, courage to change the things that I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And for me, that's one of the things that it will allow us to realize that, we are conscious being, we are mindful, but we also have our own limitations, and that should be a kind of mantra as we go in our daily lives.
I love that. I'm smiling to myself because I cannot tell you how many times I have to remind myself, Lynn, you're still human. Lynn, you're still human. So those limitations, to remind myself, I'm still in a human body. So yes. I appreciate that. That's great. And I've never heard it referenced to the serenity prayer. And I actually really, I see that correlation in that, in how you just described it. So thank you. Laura, how about you?
Actually, there's a study, scientific study, that researched that there is an association of the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system activities with the mystical and meditative experiences as well. So I believe that when the person gets to feel aligned and flowing at all levels, that person has those, I like calling it in kinesiology or in healing sessions, those aha moments. When the client comes to a session and they say, "This, I feel on this way," and they feel absolutely entangled, and their body representing that stagnated energy not flowing, and they feel this rigidity, this fear, this concern, this extreme vulnerability, and absolutely fear at the same time of even showing up and showing and expressing themselves fully. When we get to disentangle all those concerns and fears and beliefs and listen to every cell, what the story that every cell is saying, the body can get to release the trauma. Whenever we get to release from that wound of the trauma, there is a transpersonal experience, an experience that shows us that we are way more than our just our thoughts or just emotions or just the physical body. It gives us this sense of alignment and grounding, but also that reminding energy that energy is everywhere. And it's all about how we invest that energy. Energy can destroy us, or any energy can, on the right place, revitalize us. So when we feel aligned at all levels, it's that ability to know that we feel in correlation with all aspects of our body, and we feel like a bigger energy, like a bigger push is even flowing through us to connect with the world outside us as well. And it's that ability to remember that life makes shapes. And when we go through trauma, we connect stuck on this situation of life is not safe, so I had to be rigid on my physical body, or I'm not allowed to be vulnerable, I'm not allowed to cry, I'm not allowed to be upset. When we connect with that alignment, like you were asking, we get to move from different shapes, and we relate to the insults of life on such a flexibility that reminds us that there's no right or wrong. We release from this polarized thinking of this is good, this is bad, people against us against people, to get to know that it's a togetherness, and to get to know that we are, like you say, we are humans, but we are also those multidimensional beings, that it's okay to make mistakes, and actually the more we make mistakes, the more we can help each other to become a better person. The more we can empathize, the more we can connect, and the more we can remember to be humble on this journey of life.
I love that. I love that. Thank you. Speaking of trauma, I was actually going to bring this up a little bit later, but I have a private message in the chat from someone, and I'm going to throw this question out. I'm actually not sure of the four of you who, I know Laura will feel comfortable because I know her pretty well, answering this. So if you feel like you have some input on this particular question, I'd love to hear from you as well. So I'll just go around the room. If you don't have anything to add, just let me know. But we have a message that we have someone who's working with refugee children from war-torn countries. So children who have lived through trauma. And this person's asking if maybe you have any input or some ideas or some guidance on how to help engage children coming from such a traumatic experience. It doesn't need to necessarily be work. So I'm sure that there are other people listening today who might work with children who have had traumatic experiences and or war-torn countries to cope and stabilize their mind, body, spirit. So Laura, I'm going to come to you, and then Bhavna, Dennis, Professor, if you have something to add, I'll come to all of you as well. If you don't have anything to add, just let me know. Laura.
Yes, so whenever we go through trauma, that energy of trauma, that experience of trauma gets stuck, let's say, gets recorded in our cellular memory, right? So it doesn't matter if it's an adult or a kid, that trauma, that traumatic event gets to be telling that story all over again. And many people think that something interesting is people get to think that trauma happens only to people that have been through war, when actually, according to the UN, the 95% of the traumatic events happen within our houses, and most likely to people inflicting trauma to each other, traumatic situations, without even knowing or realizing. So these kind of tips don't only apply to them, it applies to everyone who's been through hardship or situations that have been feeling stuck. So when it comes to the trauma aspect, one of the things that happen is our body becomes absolutely stiff and dissociated, right? Our visual scope gets absolutely shortened. Our ability to even feel connected to our body gets absolutely cut. Imagine like a wire that actually has no more signal. So a way to actually support someone who's been through traumatic experience is, first of all, to talk on their own level, to observe. It's never good to just right away to be speaking right away. It's to observe their body language, to observe their breathing, to observe where they are looking. Whenever, for example, we go through trauma, we get our visual scope, we say, gets usually on the lower aspect, or we get even in the inner aspect without even realizing we have a physical body, because we feel absolutely dissociated and disconnected, because we feel, those kids may feel, it's not safe to be human, or it's not safe to feel. So one of the hardest things on traumatic experiences is they feel it's not okay to be a living thing, not okay to feel sensations, because I'm scared of feeling those emotions. One thing that actually helps them is observe. Second is to talk at their own level, maybe to sit down close to them, but no touching unless we're invited, right? Another thing that helps a lot is to make open questions. Another activity that helps could be what we call raspberry lips, like something like this, that allows the whole body and the whole muscles on the mouth to get to release the stress so they can get to express themselves easier. Another thing that can help, of course, is to bring your arms under your armpit. And that's a self-regulating exercise. It helps the person to feel grounded, to feel contained, to feel taken care. Maybe sometimes just giving the hand can be amazing enough. So it's just about, there's no one size fits all. It's about observing where the kid is at the time and what is the kid demanding, and being able, more than bringing ourselves and giving them tips, is to get to go one step at a time and observing if we are welcome to give and support, and to create that bond. The more space we give them, the more they will trust us.
Thank you, Laura. Dennis, how about you? Any advice working with children?
Yes, from a professional perspective, this is slightly not within my remit, so I'll just speak from my own lived experience. Without trying to sound eliciting self-pity, I think the best way to share this is I'll take you to my childhood. So I grew up in a slum in the Philippines where there was no running water, there was no electricity. I did not even sleep in a bed until I was 16. So going to university was really, I don't think it's something for me. So I don't know if poverty is comparable to work trauma, but I consider it something to be kind of traumatic experience because it put barriers in what you want to achieve in life. But aside from my parents, there's one significant individual who helped me realize the power of ambition and aspiration, and that's my chemistry teacher. And she told me that you have to bring your family out of the slums and you can do it. So the bottom line that what I'm saying is that you have to encourage young people that you have, you're capable of aspiring something. You have the power to seize possibility. what kind of trauma, what kind of adversity it is. And just offer a helping hand. And so on top of what Laura has already said earlier, I think just be a source of inspiration to young people.
Thank you, Dennis. Professor, do you have anything to add about how to work with children? Oh, you're not unmuted yet.
So before about
did we lose
sorry?
you? Okay, there you go.
Yeah. So before coming to Thailand about 2003, that I was working with one monastic education center where I met up with many young novices, all those like children starting from like almost like from the 7 years old until like 20 or something like that. So between so I met up, I had to work with those young novices. So they are coming from a different family background. So that is really challengeable because to how to guide them. So that is I experienced when I was in Sri Lanka, like a teacher in the monastic education center. So I got opportunity to advise or the guide them in the path of studying the monastic education. So that is a very tough actually in Sri Lanka. So however that when we experience the result that even though they went from very beginning, it's really hard for them to what's called engage or the made up themselves to work with monastic education. But however, if we really guide them or advise them how to change their attitude into monastic life and learn something from the scriptures and how we can put those practices what are learning in their day-to-day life. So it is really happy that some students we can't imagine that the status in the society now they are living with. So I think that that experience or that advices we have contributed the becomes fulfilled, the fruitful. So then to deal with, no matter it is adopting oneself into any environment to deal with, so that advice we have given because they come from the house life into live with different society, different people. So in that state, like guiding them to maintain no matter whatever situation they are facing with, but still we have to deal with. So that encouragement to the mind or the young novices. So today we can see that the result of such encouragement, they have been playing such significant role in the societies. I think that very fruitful to encourage them to adopt themselves into so that actually I have done for my last almost like 3 decades. Okay.
Oh, thank you, Professor. And Bhavna.
It's a very sensitive topic, right? And when you have children facing trauma, I'll share an experience where I did workshops in the slum for the slum kids in India, where I sponsor kids for their education. And going to the slums of India, for example, in Delhi, it's a very scary atmosphere. The ambience is not very friendly. But these kids, what they have is they're full of life, they're full of stories, they're excited. They're going through so many experiences that they are actually facing a lot of pain. Yet they have the spark of, I want this. We live in a society where cancel culture is going on, toxic positivity is going on. So that's why it's very important that when the kids are coming from refugees, when the kids are coming from poverty, how do we accept them? Accepting, open questions, listening to their stories, providing coaching and mentorship that allows the kids to express themselves, allows the kids to say they're safe to share what they want to be or want to do. And yes, there is room for improvement. There is always room for progress. Some of the kids, when they have traumatic experiences from the experience of providing Reiki or existential counseling, who come from backgrounds of abuse or divorce cases, or little kids have not been treated well, for example, they need to be heard. So they need someone to listen to them. And kids, once they start to open up and you talk to their level, like Laura said, they are going to tell you what they want, how they are. And once they kind of trust you, you build that trust with them. And they feel that they have someone to guide them, someone to mentor them. But above all, I feel it's very important to listen, acknowledge, acceptance, and telling them it is okay where they're coming from, because the belief system of these kids are such as they're surrounded by society and social status that they may feel ashamed of even going through a trauma. It feels that it was a big mistake that they went through that, but it's okay to tell them it is okay not to be okay, and how we can make this better, and how they can achieve the progression and success in their life. That's what I would say.
Thank you so much. Those were all great points. I want to add one additional point. I worked with children who in a bereavement camp, not from a war-torn country. However, a lot of these children did come from traumatic past, or the parents were killed in a traumatic accident or something. And one of the things that's always stuck with me, besides a lot of what all of you had said, the support, the getting down to their level, to the listening skills, was a very simple act that I never thought of, is when they start to cry, do not put Kleenex or something in front of them, because that squashes the ability for them to process through. So if they're getting emotional, creating that safe space and not going in for, and I think Laura had mentioned this, going in for the hug or the touch, or even just simply giving Kleenex, which is an act of, what we think that is the right thing to do. However, that can squash their ability to be able to process, and it makes them retreat more. So very sensitive topic indeed. And thank you all for sharing your stories and your perspectives. Let's turn it a little bit. I do want to come back to, because a lot of things have been discussed about the mind and the spirit. And so I want to ask, what is when we are not harnessing the power, what are the effects on our body, on our physical bodies that can happen? So that way, maybe we can start to recognize some of these signs or different things, because a lot of times, it's manifesting in our physical form, in our body form, but we might not understand that that's what it is. So I'm going to go to Dennis first, and then go around the room.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it reminds me of two concepts in health psychology: allostasis and homeostasis. So basically, our body tries to regulate balance. So if we don't have that balance, it disrupts our homeostasis, and so that would be reflected in our physiology. It damages our sleep patterns, and it also damages our concentration. So it's really important that we look after these three things: mind, spirit, and body. And I also want to add that if we really want to, promote homeostasis, we have to take into account allostasis, which is teaching us that we have to adapt through stress. This one wonderful neuropsychologist, her name is Dr. Patricia Doyle, and she's done a lot of work on how we could actually cultivate allostasis in relation to resilience. And because I'm coming from that perspective, she said that if you, those people who have a sense of purpose, those who have a sense of purpose, they become more resilient, they become more, it also affects their body, it affects their physiology. So just by having, having a sense that I'm capable of doing things, and I have a role in life that that gives you balance, that achieves your balance. There was one interesting study. I can't remember who the researchers are, but they found out that those old people who live on their own, because you suddenly lost purpose. But if you have a pet, you try to force yourself that I have to get up because I have to feed that pet because it depends on me. So just, just little things like that, like having a little purpose, instead of you just spending your whole time in the bed, because it's not healthy for you. Yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, absolutely, Dennis. Thank you. Professor, how about you, when people might be aligned off in the body, or excuse me, the mind and the spirit, how does that affect one's body? What are some signs we could look for? Professor, unmute. I'm going to be so happy to go back to live events, because I swear our first live event for Tomorrow People Org, I'm going to stand up, Vlads, I'm going to stand up and just yell unmute. So, Professor.
Yeah. Here we can see that such the the realizations of importance of these three, especially like in maintaining them in beneficial way without compromising. So here we can see that although these three have separate characteristics, body, mind, body and spirituality, but they are interrelated in activation. So in this sense, the body is healthy but mentally weak. So the body will not be able to handle it properly. And at the same time, like here, due to that, the difference between the two things, like the body and the spirituality. So then, the body and the mind, that the spirituality will not be reached. So therefore, it is necessary to to maintain. It's to understand that the body, all the interrelations, and also the balancing of these three things together. So it is we can achieve. So of course, when there is balance, or when there is proper maintaining of the mind, it probably will lead to achieve such healthy conditions of the body. So that is nowadays, like when we talk about the development of the mind, many they said that you can overcome many physical illnesses by truly applying such type of mindfulness. Even such type of sicknesses, like even the very common, like nowadays, like such illnesses, those are facing with like diabetics, cancer. So sometimes some people deal with those physical illnesses through the development of the mind. So I think that if we really recognize the power of the mind and such spirituality, of course it will assist or to have such mental healthiness. I believe that. Even myself, like I'm now 47, but still to maintain myself, like okay, meditation in somehow it is very beneficial to maintain in my mental health. At the same time, it is very beneficial for me to achieve some physical healthiness. So I think that when there is these two developed, spirituality probably will develop there.
Excellent. Thank you, Professor. Bhavna.
I feel that, well, psyche and soma are related. And, that's why there is a very strong relationship with our immunology, I would say. And our immune system reacts to so much that we don't even realize. So basically, our emotions, our thought processes does affect there's a chain reaction in our blood chemistry, right? And it does affect your stomach, your nervous system, your endocrine system, and your immunity. There is a huge, there are lots of researches, and from experience, and from varied treatments for different age groups. Let's say that our body has many portals, and we have this huge vortex at different areas, but we have small portals. I would call them chakras. And every part of our chakra is connected to every body part, every organ. So basically, when I was having a lot of headaches when I was a teenager, I understood emotional blockages. That's how I, started to release, started to forgive, started to become more empathetic, self-worth, self-love. And there's a process, right? You need to process yourself. And then once you do that, you realize that there's so much release, and then your headaches kind of like disappear. And, so much of you can actually heal. Cancer patients, depending on the level and their experiences, they do Reiki treatments. They feel the comfort, and the comfort helps them. I'm not going to say 100% healing them, because you always have to consult the physician, the doctor, and someone depending on the level. But there are a lot of cases where people have actually been healed by understanding the power of your own body's healing system. As well as when I had one of my researches, I used this book, The Frontiers of Health by Dr. Christine Page. She explains all kinds of sicknesses in this book that is related to every part of your body. Every organ of yours is very, very important. So, and of course, physical exercise. So if we kind of integrate and know that there's mind, body, spirit integration, our soul will evolve. And there's a lot of things that we can actually learn, how our immune system gets stronger, the power of acceptance, the power of release, the power of our mind can actually make us healthy, and also manifest a better health, a better quality of life. Yeah.
Thank you, Bhavna. Laura.
So related to what we were discussing before about trauma, one thing is to go through trauma and survive a trauma, and the other thing is to complete the cycle of trauma. Because what happens whenever we go through trauma, we say, okay, let's say the war is done, the hardship is done, whatever it is done, I'm home. But on a cellular level, every cell of our body remembers that event, that situation, even though we wish it didn't happen, it still happens, right? And any single incident or event on any minimal way that is related to that situation will trigger us the same fight or flight or freeze response. So what happens? Those cells need to be nurtured, need to be taken care. Whenever we go through hardship, any kind of events that are really tough on us, we connect with silence, we connect with shame, with anger, with fear, with that secrecy. And that silence has a cost in our body. The cost, it can be manifested either like they were saying before, the Professor Bhavna and Dennis on the physical disease. It can manifest, or even an emotional or mental aspect. It could be having like from HDAD to having a cancer, but also terrible migraines to gut issues. It doesn't matter what's the issue. The point is our body hasn't been able to feel safe. It's like those cells are saying, wait a minute, I've been through danger, so life is not a safe place to be. So just in case, whatever it happens, I need to be there, ready to fight. So unless we don't provide that peace to every single cell, and we bring and restore that feeling that it is safe to be in my body, it is safe to be in this world, our cellular level will continue to reproduce this feeling of fight or flight. Whenever I have cancer clients that have been through cancer and they are recovered cancer patients, when I do, for example, with kinesiology or healing, I see that on the cellular level, the energy of cancer is still there, even though the study says they don't have cancer anymore. Why is that? Because the person still is scared about letting go the hardship. There's a point that we go for so long going through trauma that we connect with that story feeling we are that event, we are that situation. And this is the time we need to separate ourselves and to say, okay, what is my body trying to tell me? And can I allow myself to continue living and tell myself a different story? Can I allow myself to get to feel safe and ask for help if I need? But also, can I allow myself to trust that what happens if I don't have this sickness anymore? And what happens if I can get to embrace new health in my life? What happens if I allow myself to release any secondary gain of fear or worry, concern, which is actually not helping us, to connect to saying, hey, I have all the right as well to have a magnificent life, to feel it, to live it fully, right? And to feel aligned at all levels. So it's about releasing from this tendency of feeling constricted and fixated and dissociated, to connecting to knowing that we can be and flow on this life on the same way we want to create. And we can get basically to remember that that life that we create is all about related to power and the power of choice, and decide who I want to be today. And be humble enough to say, like we were saying, we are humans. We don't come with everything known, but it's okay to ask for help. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. That question is very close to my heart. Even though I asked it in the body sense, the immune system came up. And a few of you know on this panel, I'm a cancer survivor, and I chose not to go through treatment. Not that I advocate for that. That's everybody's personal choice. However, what I did do is I completely changed the way that I thought. I did a lot of spiritual work. I did a lot of mind work, and changed even some of the things that I was doing with my physical body in order to heal from that and to keep from that. And then actually years later, working with individuals, even such as Bhavna and Laura on the panel, to continue that process of letting go of the cancer that once lived in my body. So I appreciate all of you for that question and that answer. So we have a question that popped up about consciousness. Is consciousness the same as mind and spirit, or is it something different? And how would you explain that, being in consciousness? Bhavna, I'm going to come back to you first.
Consciousness is a state of awareness, right? We become aware about something, and then we start to decide, and then we become mindful. You know, when our conscious state allows us to become, to feel that something is happening around us, and is a state of mind of bringing some kind of insight to that awareness. And that's how we create a conscious lifestyle, you know. So I feel there is some difference, but I think they're all related. It's like a step-by-step process. Yeah. And consciousness also allows us to break patterns because of that awareness. So when we break that pattern and break the cycle that doesn't really serve purpose, it allows us to heal a deep generational pattern as well, without even knowing it sometimes, you know. So for me, that is what consciousness is: the power to say no, the power of awareness, and the self-reflection, the self-management, you know, the self-regulation that we try to do. Yeah.
Thank you. Professor, how about you? What would be your opinion?
Yeah, when the consciousness and mind seems like synonyms, when we go through some scriptures descriptions, consciousness and also like we call like there are three terms, those are interrelated, like chitta or mind, mana is still the mind, and consciousness, vijnana. So these three are appearing as synonyms, or having same like similar designations. So the functions of these like consciousness and the mind to recognizing the object. So that means whatever we experience as in our day-to-day life, we recognize through consciousness. But spirituality, it's something like the principles that those we apply, or the intimates or like animates with the body, spirituality. So then it's something for me like consciousness and mind, of course they seems like synonyms. They are synonyms, or they are having quite similar functions or the characteristics. But spirituality, it is something different perspective. And of course as Bhavna mentioned that of course they are interrelated, depending on, seems like one on another. So in this cardiac, what's called the relations also, that is important. But however, these three things like the consciousness, mind, of course, they seems like having similar functions and characteristics, and spirituality having its own characteristics. So it seems like those two are similar, but spirituality having something vast and huge range to cover.
Thank you,
Yes.
Professor. Dennis, how about you?
I think the similarity and the difference doesn't just sit within a linguistic level. It's also tied in within personal belief, within cultural system, and it's also something to do with a specific discipline. So I would define consciousness as just, you know, being aware of your own existence, of your own being. Whereas your mind, it's something more complex than consciousness. It's how you process your thoughts. It's how you process your feelings, your emotions. Whereas spirituality, that's something that is more difficult and more challenging to quantify, because it already goes within the realm of belief and religiosity. And but we could also be spiritual without being religious. And that area of spirituality, because it's so difficult to quantify, we don't really know. We can't really be the judge of how important it is. What's the specific role of it? So we just assign it to something that we cannot really quantify. And you know, for me, it sits within a pyramid. So for me, at the very basic is the mind, and then after that is consciousness, and the higher level would be spirituality. That's how I see them. I see them interrelated, and so I would be at a point, because I'm not religious myself, but it would be a pleasure for me to, you know, achieve that level of spirituality, because you know, even within the field of psychology, they said that there's a value, the psychological value in relying in spirituality. Even people who have experienced serious trauma and adversity, they rely on spiritual coping when they've tried everything, and you know, when you try to rationalize everything, you just realize that there's something more divine, there's something more powerful than your existence, and that's what I would call spirituality.
Excellent, thank you, Dennis. And Laura?
When it comes to consciousness and our body, I believe that every cell in our body has a type of consciousness. Its consciousness is on the cell membrane, right? And our emotions, our beliefs, our experiences, like we know, they're imprinted on a cellular level. What is something that I love from Bruce Lipton when he talks about biology of belief is that it used to be, you know, people before him would say, you are born with this DNA and that's it, right? You are predestined to suffer this kind of sickness, these kinds of ailments, and that's it. And something that I loved from Bruce Lipton, he had the humility to say, wait a minute, I realize I've been teaching all this wrong. Our mind can actually change our cellular level. So if our mind and our emotions as well can change our cells, then those cells become intelligent on a much higher level. Those cells can turn on and off according to the stimulus around us. And it could be to the external environment, and it can be also to the internal environment. So it's not just about the people that surround us, it's not about the country or the religion or the spiritual realm we may want to connect with only. It's also where I want to bring light, where I want to focus in my life. What am I feeding? How am I nurturing myself? What stories I may want to connect that they are truthful to in order to keep on being balanced and aligned. And which stories I may be able to say, thank you very much, they served me till now, but not anymore. Whenever someone gets to be able to step up and step out from the trauma aspect, we are actually rewiring all the neural pathways. All those cells immediately change. That's why when we have a kinesiology session with a client and they come with pain, after the session they say, my pain is decreased like 40%. What happened? And we just discuss and talk, not necessarily I did a massage or anything like that. It depends on the person. So they say, what happened? And I usually tell them, you change the way you think. Whenever you change your perception, your whole body will reconnect again to that homeostasis that Dennis was saying about realigning and rebalancing ourselves to that ability to say, I am the creator of my life. So that cell of the body will connect with health, will connect with wellness, will connect with that ability to know that it's not about which religion we choose. It's about, am I allowing myself to transcend from my own inner obstacles and step up and step forward? Thank you.
Thank you so much. We have another question from our audience. I'm going to read this off, and then I'm going to go around the room. Traditionally, we're taught to think about the soul as a separate from the body. Would anyone on the panel be willing to explore the idea of an in-souled body in which the soul is threaded throughout the body, similar to the blood running through our veins? Laura, you put your hand up. So any of you that want to speak on this, please raise your hand. And
this is a topic that I love as well, because actually before connecting into kinesiology and being passionate about that, I studied pranic healing. And the way my spiritual teachers taught us, called Grandmaster Chokoksui, is that something that I love feeling is that we are a soul, right? Descending from the, let's say, imagine the universe, imagine then the soul on a lower scale, because, and then that soul connecting into and getting, how can I say, getting born into a physical body. It's like that soul, a teeny tiny amount of portion of that soul gets incarnated on that physical body. So our physical body becomes, you know, what we see, our hair, our eyes, our organs, whatever it is. But within us, we know that we are more than our thoughts, our emotions, and our physical body. We are that soul. So that ability of soul is to connect that we're something even greater than we think, and that soul has a universal intelligence. That soul has a universal wisdom. And knowing that soul, on the way I like thinking, on every incarnation, every time we come to this physical life, that soul continues to get upgraded. On the same way we upgrade our phones, in the same way we upgrade our devices, our soul also continues getting upgraded and evolving. And the way it evolves is actually when we go through challenges, right? Because life is not just a beautiful valley. We can have the ups and downs, and we all know what we are talking about, right? So the more we can get to grow from our own mistakes and also help each other to become a better person, the more as well our soul gets to evolve. And something that I like thinking is, when we evolve, people around us also evolve. That's where the magic begins. When we know that we are not just isolated islands on this planet, that we are more connected than we think we are. Like now, actually. We are on Zoom on different parts of the planet, and we are discussing at the same time.
excellent. Thank you, Laura. Would anybody else like to chime in on that question asked from our audience? Okay, Bhavna.
I won't say much. I think our soul journey is infinite, right? Our soul basically doesn't have any form, it's a pure light, it's a pure being that we cannot see, we cannot touch. It is just infinite, and we are just flowing, and while we are evolving in our lives through meditation, we are just going journey inwards. Like our masters would say, our ascended masters have taught, and all the teachings by the gurus who left, that everybody is a Buddha, and there's a Buddha in everybody, right? And it's very important for us to understand that we told ourselves that there's only one good soul and only one soul can be enlightened, but that's not true. So that's why when it comes to our soul journey, the word soul is something that you cannot touch, something that is so deep, something that is the entire universe. And how we are actually we're having our own journey inward to understand that what is going on. But yes, everybody has their own version of a soul, right? And they would think about spirit differently, soul differently, but this is what I feel.
Thank you, Bhavna. All right, I'm going to switch the question, and what I'd like to know is, are there any current trends, especially with COVID and everything that happened over the last 2 years? A lot of things have changed and evolved, had to adapt in order to be able to survive in some ways. And so I'm going to come to you first, Dennis. Are there any current trends that you've noticed in the psychological field or psychology field that you feel, or research or practices that you feel are worth staying, that that you would say are newer trends currently?
This will probably reveal my age, because when I was an undergraduate at university, we just call it anecdotal evidence, and we're not putting a lot of emphasis on qualitative research. But right now, even before the COVID pandemic, there's been an emerging trend to focus on what we call lived experience. And we're now focusing on qualitative research. So it's not just about statistical basis for human behavior, but we're also listening and validating people's experience. So I think that's a good trend. And also there's now an element of what we call co-production. So it's a technical term within psychological research. So basically what you're doing is you're involving your participants in designing an intervention. Just to give you a specific example, for instance, I'm doing a resilience intervention, and my chosen mode of doing that is through blogging. So I could have just designed a blogging intervention that from my own preconceived notion is going to work. But I chose to invite participants from different countries, from Indonesia, Malaysia, and the Philippines. And when I hear these narratives from people who have experienced adversity, who have experienced trauma, I actually learn from them. And that's one of the amazing trends when it comes to psychological research, this co-production, this listening to the narrative of young adults, this greater emphasis in qualitative research. Because even though we try to make human behavior as as specific and as quantifiable as possible, and it may sound cheesy, but we can't really put human behavior in a box. And it's great that psychology as a science is moving towards that field, that we acknowledge that there may be lapses in our scientific judgment. And yeah, that's the trend that I'm really, I really find interesting and useful, perhaps not just in psychology, but in any other, fields in social science.
Excellent, thank you. All right, so this question is going to go out to all of you, and this might be our final question, is I'd love to know, any last thoughts on this particular topic, exploring the power of the mind, body, and spirit. And if you can throw in another actionable item, I will love you all even more, because I love action. But what are your last thoughts, or maybe something that we didn't discuss that you feel is still really important to cover on this topic, exploring the power of the mind, body, and spirit? So Professor, I'm going to come to you. Any last thoughts or anything that maybe we didn't cover that you feel is really important to have a conversation around real quick? Don't forget to unmute.
So we know that mind, body, and spirituality are interrelated. So the performance of one of these will definitely affect it to other two, right? So then, however, like when concerned as whole, the mind plays a significant role in terms of many scriptures. Like one can understand the nature of the body when pay attention wisely on mind. So this we call like the wise attentions. In some terminologies appearing in scriptures like Yoniso Manasikara, so the wise attention to understand the nature, how the functionings of the those things. Like so, then realization of this spirituality also depends on mind. So it's like although like these have a separate characteristic, as I mentioned earlier, that they are interrelated and activation. So if understanding of these interrelations of these three things, that is very essential to what called like to maintain properly. So maintain these things in such a beneficial way. So with that, actually, we can see that such applications in nowadays. Just before, like we were talking about some tendencies about this spirituality, how the mind, body, and these things are interrelated. So many modern the subjects came to exist because of this significance. Just like we mentioned, like counseling, and some subject or some academic courses came to introduced by the universities and academic institutions, like counseling and the mindfulness and face studies. So a new subject because of this in this significance of these the factors of mind, body, and spirituality. So it is very necessary, as we discussed earlier, also like a balancing of these three in terms of development. So in individuals, and of course once the individual is developed and concentrated, of course that affect into the society. So we can see that some very significant. Last time I was joining with one conference in Indonesia. It is about interreligious dialogue, something like that. So that is very interesting to understand the essence of these three and their interrelations. So that is what I would like to mention here.
Thank you, Professor. How about you, Dennis? Any last thoughts? Anything that we didn't cover that you feel is super important for this particular topic?
I think one thing, one of the key takeaways that I want the audience to have is that when we explore the power of mind and body, it gives us the realization that we are able to transform our thoughts and change our reality. And once we accept that fact, that we are responsible for many things that happens to us, we become more empowered in taking control of our lives. And I'm not saying that we can control everything, but it gives us a bit more nuance and a bit more perspective on how we can actually, control these three things together, and how we could actually help them to cultivate our lives and live a more purposeful and meaningful lives. I think that's the main takeaway that I want to convey to anyone who's taking part in this panel talk.
Thank you, Dennis. Bhavna.
I would say that go with the flow. We cannot always control situations and control our mind, but if we go with the flow and just do what we want to do and be in the moment, that is very important for us. And we should not only think about mind, body, spirit for academia, for schools, but take it even in our workplace. That's why cultivating and fostering mindfulness leaderships and empowering men and women for generations, that they are going to take these teachings, and it's not about teaching, but living it. You are mindful. You are the meditation. You are the conscious living being, and you are a conscious and a mindful leader. So I would say that it's not only about just having it within our classrooms. Our emotional intelligence needs to be even in our workplaces. We need to even take it in our houses, and above all, live it.
I love that. Yes, chicken skin. Laura.
A few things is maybe to allow ourselves to check in. And when I say check in, is to explore emotions and feelings and bodily sensations without judgment. We live on a polarized world where it's either good or wrong, right, up or down. And it seems that the more we create those polarized worlds, the more we isolate ourselves. So something that I believe is that whenever I get with clients is that they say, I shouldn't have fear, I shouldn't have anger, I shouldn't have this. And basically to say, wait a minute, no one should not do anything at all. It's not about shouldn't, it's about allowing ourselves to remember that emotions are simply that, are energy in movement. And basically emotions are the fabric that hold us together. Emotions are the glue that allow us to be in this togetherness when it comes to my internal world and my external world. And the main issue for which we have all this physical disease in life And this somehow dissociation between our body, mind, and spirit is that we get to segregate our point of view. And actually, the more we get to acknowledge those emotions, some emotion may have a higher vibration, some emotion may have a lower vibration, but it's completely allowed to experience all of them. Because only we can get to say, yes, I'm having anger, I'm having fear, I'm terrified, and I'm scared, and I'm mad, but I'm also in love. Only when we have this right to embrace that emotion, that cell level get to say, hey, I can get to transmute from that emotion to another one. We know that whatever we resist persists. That's why disease happens. That's why we feel stuck and dissociated and disoriented. So the more we get to remember that all emotions come and go, and like we know on this life, everything is a dynamics ecosystem, is to bring that ability to say, I can take one step at a time. I can allow myself, even on times of discomfort and pain, hey, what is my body trying to say? What is the story my mind is bringing? What is my intuition telling me? And to explore, to be curious. Because only when we are curious, we can get to grow. We don't come to this life just to support hypotheses. We come to this life to have a magnificent life, but also to be genuine with that fabric that where we are, and knowing that the more we recognize where we are today, the more we are going to feel even more connected and alive and united to anyone in the planet. So yeah. And also to remember that there's no right to think that my genes tell me this story and that's it. Remember that your genes talk about only 35% of your possible life. But all, like Danny was saying, and Bhavna and the professor, your thoughts, the way you think, the way you feel, also are like the condiments and the spices that will bring that uniqueness. And just embrace that journey. Thank you.
No, thank you. And I have a new quote: whatever we resist persists. I love that quote. I'm totally stealing it. All right. Well, first of all, the four of you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you for saying yes. Thank you for all the work that you do in this world and that you've shared with us today. This was an incredible panel discussion on exploring the power of the mind, body, and spirit at our 7th annual International Conference on Spirituality and Psychology. For all of you tuning in on the Whova app, which is the app platform that we use for our particular online conferences until we go back live, thank you for coming on, and please make sure that you message our panelists on the app. For those of you listening to the live, either live in person right now or watching the replay, please make comments, ask questions, engage with our panelists. They have a wealth of knowledge and experience from all different aspects, and they're willing to share. And this was just incredible. Keep this dialogue and this discussion going. We just really appreciate you. And yes, we thank you all for tuning in to the 7th Annual International Conference on Spirituality and Psychology. And tomorrow we'll have another panel at the same time. So if you're listening live, tune in. But thank you, panelists, so much. And yeah, we look forward to seeing you again. Thank you so much.